Have you ever noticed something strange? The people who seem happiest online are often the ones complaining about money a few years later. Meanwhile, the people quietly building real wealth rarely show off anything at all. No luxury shopping halls, no expensive dinners posted every weekend, no constant upgrades. Just quiet decisions that somehow make them richer every single year. So here's the question. Why do rich people keep buying assets while everyone else keeps buying happiness? It sounds ridiculous at first. After all, isn't money supposed to make life more enjoyable? Then why do so many high earners stay broke while ordinary people become millionaires without ever winning the lottery or starting the next billion-dollar company? The answer has nothing to do with intelligence, luck, or working harder. It comes down to one psychological difference that quietly shapes every financial decision you make. One group buys things that make them feel rich today. The other buys things that make them rich forever. And once you understand this invisible habit, you'll start noticing it everywhere. In your friends, your coworkers, your family, and maybe even in yourself. By the end of this video, you'll understand why most people accidentally spend their future on temporary happiness, why the wealthy think completely differently, and how one simple shift in the way you spend money could change your financial life for decades to come. Because the biggest difference between the rich and everyone else isn't how much they earn. It's what they choose to buy when everyone else is chasing the next hit of happiness. 1. The destruction of the common belief. Let's start by dismantling the first thing we've all been taught. We've been told that wealth is a function of income. We've been told that if you work hard, get a good education, and climb the corporate ladder, the wealth will follow. It sounds logical. It sounds like the American dream or the global dream. But it's a trap. If income was the only variable, we wouldn't see professional athletes going bankrupt. We wouldn't see lottery winners ending up worse off than they started. We wouldn't see doctors and lawyers who are million-dollar earners but are living paycheck to paycheck because of their lifestyle. The common belief is that you need to earn more to save more. But that's not what the ultra-wealthy practice. They operate on a different plane. They understand a fundamental truth that the middle class misses. The first dollar isn't for spending, it's for seeding. Here's the moment of psychological tension. The moment you realize you've been lied to your whole life. Think about the word investment. When most people hear that word, they think of the stock market. They think of something abstract, something you do with a retirement account that you never look at. The rich think of investment as a purchase. They buy assets. An asset is simply something that puts money in your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out. It sounds simple, but if you apply that test to your own life, it's terrifying. The new car you financed? It takes money out. The designer wardrobe? It takes money out. The vacation? It takes money out. The rich look at these things and see them as friction. They see them as holes in the bucket. The middle class, on the other hand, sees these things as rewards for hard work. But here's the kicker. The advertising industry has spent trillions of dollars to convince you that these liabilities are actually assets. They call the new phone an investment in your productivity. They call the expensive car a statement of your success. They call the vacation an investment in your mental health. And they aren't entirely wrong. Those things do have value, but they are value that depreciates. They are value that consumes. The wealthy understand that when you buy a liability, you aren't buying an object. You are buying a promise of future work. You are buying a requirement that you must go back to the office on Monday and grind to pay for it. You are buying the mortgage payment, the insurance, the maintenance. You are buying a chain. The rich, on the other hand, buy assets. They buy things that don't require them to go to work. They buy apartment buildings that produce rent. They buy businesses that produce profits. They buy stocks that produce dividends. And this leads to a critical realization. The rich buy assets so they can eventually buy happiness for free. The middle class buys happiness now and pays for it with their future time. 2. The secret playbook of the elite. Now, let's reveal the hidden system. This is the part where we look behind the curtain and see the playbook the ultra-wealthy have been using for generations. If you read the biographies of the wealthiest families in history, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Medici, they all follow a similar pattern. It's a playbook built on patience and deferred gratification, which sounds boring, but it's the most powerful force in finance. Warren Buffett is the ultimate example of this. He's a billionaire. He is, in fact, one of the wealthiest human beings to ever live. Yet he lives in the same house he bought in 1958 for $31,500. He drives a regular car. He eats at McDonald's. He seems, to the outsider, to be a miser. But he's not avoiding joy. He's just playing a different game. When you see Warren Buffett, you see a man who has mastered the art of opportunity cost. He understands that every dollar spent on a new car today is a dollar that is not working for him for the next 50 years. That one car, if invested, could become 10 cars, then 100 cars, then a business. He didn't avoid happiness. He bought the machine first. He bought the asset, let it grow, and now that asset pays for his lifestyle in his 90s without him having to do a thing. The happiness is a byproduct of the machine. But here's the conspiracy disguised as financial advice. The system is designed to keep you away from this knowledge. Why? Because the economy needs consumers. It needs people to buy the phones, the cars, the clothes, and the vacations. If everyone suddenly stopped buying liabilities and started buying assets, the consumer economy would collapse. So, the media, the banks, and the advertisers create a culture of fear and FOMO, fear of missing out. They make you feel inadequate if you don't have the latest gadget. They make you feel poor if you don't take a vacation to an exotic location. They equate spending with living. Think about the credit card commercial. It's always a happy person, or a happy family, doing something wonderful. It never shows the bill at the end of the month. It never shows the stress of paying that bill. It shows the happiness you're buying, not the prison you're building. The ultra-wealthy don't fall for this because they don't care about status in the same way. They have society wealth, which is the wealth of the land, the assets, the holdings. They don't need to flash their wealth on their wrist. They don't need to impress the person at the gas station. They are so deep into the game of asset accumulation that buying a luxury watch feels like a waste of capital that could buy a rental property. This is the secret. The rich have a completely different dopamine loop. When the average person gets a bonus, they think, "What can I buy?" Their dopamine spikes when they hit place order. When the wealthy get a bonus, they think, "What asset can I buy?" Their dopamine spikes when they see the future cash flow projections. They get addicted to the income, not the object. They get addicted to the power of ownership, not the pleasure of consumption. 3. The history of authority and historical precedent. Let's look at the history books. This isn't new behavior. It's not a modern invention of Silicon Valley billionaires. It is as old as human civilization. In ancient Rome, the wealthy patricians didn't spend their money on fancy clothes all the time. They bought land, they bought slaves, they bought ships, they bought assets. The plebeians, the common people, spent their money on food, games, and bread. They lived for the spectacle. The patricians lived for the yield. The same pattern occurred during the Renaissance. The Medici family didn't get rich by buying expensive tapestries and gold plates. They got rich by building a banking empire. They bought assets, banks, businesses, political influence. They financed artists like Michelangelo and Da Vinci. They used their asset income to buy culture, to fund the creation of masterpieces that we still revere today. The wealthy don't spend their capital. They recycle it. They allocate it. They direct it. Now, let's look at the SEC filings. If you ever get bored, and I know you probably will, but if you do, look at the 13F filings of the top hedge funds. Look at what the billionaires are buying. They are buying shares in companies that generate cash. They are buying real estate. They are buying infrastructure. But here's the part that feels like a conspiracy. They want you to buy the stuff so they can buy the companies that sell you the stuff. Let's trace it back. You work hard for your money. You go to the mall. You buy a $1,000 phone. That $1,000 goes to the phone company. The phone company pays its shareholders, or it buys back stock, which increases the share price. Who owns a lot of that stock? The wealthy. Who owns the pension funds that own the stock? The wealthy. So in a way, when you buy the new phone, you are transferring your labor value to the wealthy. You are giving them cash so they can keep buying assets. This is the cruel twist of the system. The middle class buys the products. The upper class buys the companies that make the products. The middle class uses their cash to buy liabilities that depreciate. The upper class uses that cash to buy assets that appreciate. So when you sit in your living room and look around, you see your stuff. The wealthy look at your living room and see their income. They own the furniture store. They own the electronic company. They own the bank that loaned you the money. This isn't evil. It's just math. It's the mathematics of wealth. 4. Turning behavior into identity. Now, let's make this personal. It's time to turn this behavior into an identity. This is where the psychological line is drawn in the sand. You have to decide who you are. The middle class buys happiness. They buy likes. They buy the feeling of being on vacation. They buy the smell of a new car. They are residents of the present. The wealthy buy assets. They buy future freedom. They buy time. They buy quiet. They buy the ability to say no to a boss, to a mortgage, to a loan. They are residents of the future. This isn't about being stingy. It's about being strategic. It's about understanding the concept of compounding. A dollar saved and invested today isn't just $1. It's a dollar that can turn into 2, 4, 8, and 16 over time. Every dollar you spend on something you don't need is a dollar you are killing. You are murdering its potential. Think about the phrase, middle class buys liabilities, rich buy assets. It sounds like a joke. It sounds like a slogan, but it's a reality that defines the trajectory of your life. If you are in your 20s or 30s and you are reading this, you are at the most critical moment. The choices you make today about the car you buy, the phone you upgrade, the clothes you wear will decide if you are Mark or David in 20 years. The moment you realize you've been lied to is the moment you stop buying happiness. You start buying potential. It's painful. It feels unnatural. Your friends might laugh at your old phone. They might tease you about your old car. They might think you're cheap, but that's because they are playing a different game. They are playing the status game. You are playing the freedom game. And this is where the identity shift happens. You are no longer a consumer. You are an investor. You are no longer a shopper. You are a purchaser of income streams. You are no longer seeking validation. You are seeking yield. You start looking at the world differently. You drive through the city and you don't just see buildings. You see rent rolls. You don't just see billboards. You see advertising revenue. You don't just see a wealthy person's house. You see a necessary liability for a guy who probably regrets buying the 8-bedroom mansion. So where does this leave us? Where does this leave you? It leaves you with a terrifying choice. The next time you have money in your pocket, the next time you get a paycheck, the next time you are browsing Amazon or walking into the mall, you are going to have a moment of clarity. You will look at the shiny new object. You will look at the vacation package. You will look at the car. And on the other side, you will look at the stock purchase order, the down payment on a duplex, the tax-advantaged account, the little piece of paper that says you own a part of a company. The shiny object offers you happiness for the next 2 weeks. The asset offers you a lifetime of freedom. The rich don't avoid happiness. They simply buy the assets first and let those assets pay for the happiness later. Warren Buffett didn't buy his private jet until he had been wealthy for decades. And when he bought it, he didn't buy it because he wanted it. He bought it because he had so much money coming in that the jet was a rounding error. He bought the machine that allowed him to buy the jet. We are entering a period of massive economic uncertainty. Inflation is eroding savings. Interest rates are changing. The global economy is shifting. But one thing remains constant: the laws of wealth. When the next crash arrives, and it always does, where will you stand? Will you be in the living room looking around at your collection of depreciating gadgets, wondering how you're going to pay the bills because your job is at risk? Or will you be sitting in the same living room, calm, because the machines you bought are still producing cash, whether you work or not? The crash doesn't create the divide, it reveals it. The divide is created right now, in the quiet moments of decision-making. It's created in the discipline of saying no to the easy dopamine hit of consumption. It's created in the willingness to look poor today so you can be rich tomorrow. You don't have to become a miser. You don't have to live in a shack. You just have to shift your intent. Don't buy something unless you can afford to buy it twice. Or better yet, don't buy something unless you can afford to buy an asset that will then buy it for you. The secret isn't a secret, it's a choice. A choice that millions of people pass on every day because it's easier to buy the phone than to buy the stock. It's easier to look rich than to be rich. But if you've made it this far, you are not the average person. You are one of the few people who actually looked behind the curtain and saw the invisible divide. So go out there, look at your bank account and decide, are you buying a memory or are you buying a machine? The next 20 years depend on your answer.